and Behavioral Sciences section of ACRL. And our topic for today is of particular interest. It's practical data management, applying social science liaison skills to research data. And I know that this is beginning to affect a lot of us, even if it's not actively part of our work right now. We just had a conversation this week at a meeting at my workplace in a leadership team meeting about all of the implications of social sciences data and how to manage that data within the library. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to learn from our presenters. Our presenters today are Abigail Gobin and Spencer Acadia. Abigail is an associate professor and the data and liaison librarian at the University of Illinois at Chicago Library of the Health Sciences. I chewed on my words there a little bit, Abigail. That's quite a title. Her research focuses on institutional data policies, educational needs in research data management, and open access. She's part of the efforts on her campus about research data management and data governance for the University of Illinois Hospital and Health Sciences System. She's also really involved in LIDA and ACRL, and she was the co-developer of the ACRL Research Data Management Roadshow. So I feel confident that we're going to learn a ton from her with that pedigree. Thank you for being here today. Our other presenter is Spencer Acadia. He's the social sciences librarian at the University of Kentucky Libraries. He is very active in national and international organizations and on committees, including IFLA, IASSIST, ACRL, and the International Arctic Social Sciences Association. And he has experience working with academic, public, and government information scholars and professionals on these issues of data management, behavior analysis, and cultural heritage activities. So I think that mix of expertise is also going to bring a ton of new knowledge, for me at least, to this presentation. So thank you both for joining us. With that, I'll stop talking and we can give the microphone over and the slides to Abigail and Spencer. Thank you both for being here.
Great. Thank you, Cass, so much for that introduction, and thank you for having both Spencer and I today. Spencer, can you turn your mic on just for a second so I know you're good?
I'm good. Thank you, Abigail.
All right. Lovely. So welcome, and thank you all for spending Friday afternoon with us. It's very, very chilly here in Chicago. And today we're going to be talking about practical data management and applying social science liaison skills to research data. Obviously, Spencer and I cannot turn you into master data people in an hour, so this is going to be a little bit of a broad overview. Neither of us have cameras today, so here's a picture so you can see what we both look like. As Cass said, I'm at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I'm the liaison to the College of Dentistry there. So my background is mostly in medicine and health sciences. If you are live tweeting today at all, and that's certainly welcome, my handle is HedgyLib. And we'll have our contact information up at the end of the session, and we both would welcome questions over the course of, if you want to follow up with us afterwards. If you have questions over the course of the seminar, Cass is watching the chat box for us. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our goals for today. What we'd like to do this afternoon is talk a little bit about identifying the research data management goals for engagement at your institution. Every institution is going to look a little different, so let's talk about that kind of thing, what it may look like and how you may need to attack that at your institution. Then we're going to talk about correlating research data management and some of the activities that you may do there with social science liaison skills. And we'll define current and potential partners to find RDM collaboration opportunities. I'm going to be talking about this more from the perspective of somebody who does data management pretty regularly, and then, but I'm not in social sciences, I'm in the health sciences, so Spencer's going to give you that real social science focus. All right. So let's talk about the goal of your library, because I'm guessing the goal that you heard was, we're going to do research data management. And that's a really broad goal, and it's very difficult to identify what that means and what that looks like, and it raises a lot of different questions. So it can be useful, if we start on this left-hand side, to kind of figure out, and I've got some noun project icons here. It can be really useful to start with, what is the goal activity that you're actually interested in doing? Are you interested in creating some kind of service? And the services, there can be a lot of different services that are around research data management. Are you interested in focusing on education? That's where we focus at my institution. We focus primarily on education around research data management as opposed to other activities. Are you interested in storage and preservation? Are you interested in receiving data sets at the end of the process, or helping facilitate preservation to ICPSR? And then are you interested in helping researchers share their data? And identifying, starting with this goal of kind of what is it that we want to do? It's really easy to just look at all of these different things. It's like, we want to do all of it. We want to do education and storage and share. That can be very overwhelming, especially if you're just getting started, you're trying to add this to already full workloads with liaison work. So picking one to start with, or one that you can go after as an institution, can be really useful. And then the other big question that we need to start with is, what are the resources that you have available to tie to this goal? Time, people, and money are the big three. And usually we can put two towards it. Sometimes we can only put one. If you only have time, if we've got time and not a lot of people and not a lot of money, well, that's going to take a while. We may be able to throw money at something. If there's money for a one-time purchase of something, or to hire someone new, depending on if it's short-term money or long-term money. And then the people, who is actually going to be involved with this? Who will be engaged? Who will be participating? What level will they be participating at? This is going to take strategic planning, and it's also going to take administrative buy-in. Frequently I talk to librarians who, they're excited and they go back and they're really excited and they're ready to go, and there may or may not be the same level of engagement from their administrative level. And if my department head does not believe in me doing something, it's going to be a much harder battle. So I empathize that if you have someone saying, no, that isn't a priority for you, it makes it much harder to carve out time and resources to spend time on it. So getting buy-in from your administration, having a clear goal of what activities you might like to undertake, and then figuring out what your resources are. And again, if you have any questions, please toss them into the chat. We'll try to make sure we've got plenty of time for those. Okay, so if there are any data librarians in the audience, they just hit a bingo on their bingo square of research data management, because pretty much anytime we talk about research data management, we talk about the life cycle of data. And I wish it were always this tidy and we always followed in a nice circle. This comes from the University of Essex, and what's nice is it gives us, it does show, you know, data is constantly moving around. What it doesn't have is all the lines where you go from creating to preserving and creating to giving access and reusing to analyze, and like all the various crosswalks that can show up. And the reason I want to focus on this today a little bit is to, one, so that you can have it in mind. And that is freely available at the UK Data Archive if you want to go and take a look at it. And they have a lot of deeper, richer definitions. When we say creating data, what is it that we actually mean? But I'd like to tie this to what it is that a liaison is actually doing, and activities that a liaison librarian can do at each of these different stages because traditionally we've thought about ourselves kind of only in that bottom bubble, maybe in the preserving data or giving access to data. You know, something there. Maybe we buy a data set or we help someone find ICPSR. And with this, our role is expanding. So it can be difficult to say, well, then what is my role at each stage of the life cycle? So I want to give you some examples. So if we're talking about, helps if I advance on this screen, doesn't it? If we're talking about what kind of activities that a social science liaison might do, when we're talking about creating data, it's not necessarily starting from scratch and you're taking down survey information or you're entering things into a spreadsheet. Creating data might involve helping a patron find a government data set. This is something most of the social science liaisons I know do regularly. They help their patrons find government data sets. So we're adding, or other kinds of data sets. So we're already starting to add a little bit of research data management into our liaison work. Some of this is just shifting mindset a little bit. If we're talking about processing data, processing can mean a lot of things depending on the field that you're in. Sometimes it's like we're cleaning up the data, we're standardizing it, we're digitizing it. This may be a patron asks you, what are the storage options on campus? And because you know what your campus computing could do, you could say, well, you know, everybody's got access to this kind of resource. But then if you need maybe more advanced, we've got some other storage options that are available. And you can help them navigate what they might need to get to based on their specific needs and help them identify the person to go talk to. I'm still surprised how many of my students don't know that we have Box. So we talk about Box a lot. When we're talking about analyzing data, I have no interest in doing analysis for people. That is a role, you know, doing the statistics for somebody, that is never going to be something I want to do. That said, statistical literacy ties into information literacy. In the current era, we're seeing librarians help with reading data visualization. So it's getting past the fake news threads that we keep hearing. Or you're looking at an image, you're looking at a chart in a newspaper, and is that, or on a website, and is that chart misstating the information? And understanding that basic statistical literacy, that's something we can tie into our information literacy. As they're critically thinking about the source of the material, let's also critically think about the visualizations, the statistical tests that they've run, and those kind of pieces. Preserving data, we might connect them with the institutional repository if you have one, Bigshare if you don't, or ICPSR. Again, it depends on the kind of data that you have. For getting access to data, there are many LibGuides you can crib from that will share with you disciplinary data repositories. And there's so many really great ones floating around right there. A lot of them are very discipline specific, so we end up drilling down a little bit more deeply. But if you could put all of, you know, several psychology ones together, now you have an opportunity for your students to discover and go back to that create bubble, your students and your faculty to discover and start creating new data. And then when we're talking about reusing data, I'm still teaching a lot of citation management software. So when I teach Zotero, we'll also talk about how to cite a data set in EPA format, because it's not just the literature anymore. Now, my role has some pretty specific data responsibilities at my institution, and I do a lot of outreach to my institution about, there are consults where I meet with people and work with that. Not everyone is interested in the role of being the data librarian, and that's great because not everybody should be. If everybody was a data librarian, it would be very dull. And we need people at a variety of levels with a variety of experiences and expertise so that we can all harmonize together around data. And this is any kind of functional expertise. And I use data as our example, But if you think about this, this could be other areas where you have functional expertise that you hand off to people in your library. So one of the things to consider is really, what is your role? What is your level of interest in this? And what is it something you can do? Maybe what you can do is help people at the reference desk with finding data sets and helping them cite that data set in APA format. And that's your level of engagement. You may be interested in getting involved on one project where you're trying to help somebody plan their data management, you're helping with a grant or something like that, or you may be interested on something high level where you're setting, we're implementing a data, if you're going to implement a data repository at your institution, you want to be involved at that high level, or a data policy. So you want to think about these different roles, and I've specified 3 here. The first is the role as liaison. What can I do? And a lot of this is kind of like sneaking broccoli into your library and information science. I'm going to sprinkle a little data management into my everyday. What can I do as a library colleague? If there are other people who are engaged in the library in more research data management, how can you work with them to hand off, to collaborate, to make sure that you can talk about what they're capable of doing so that you can facilitate handoff, or they know, when you come to them, okay, it's like you've identified this, but now they're ready for another step that's not in your wheelhouse. I have a number of colleagues who will send people to me for specific questions. They've gotten them to a certain point. And they're like, you know what, you should go talk to Abigail. And it's really great, because then we'll get back into something that isn't, business resources, not my wheelhouse. And I'm like, great, and now you go right back to my business liaison. And then think about your campus colleagues. So to whom do you refer? And I borrowed these verbs, do, collaborate, refer. This comes from Michigan. And Jake Carlson's team with Scott Martin, they presented this idea of do, collaborate, refer. And when you think about referral, it's really going beyond the library. It's like, I'm not involved anymore, I'm handing you off. And the example I like to give is data security with working with campus computing. I cannot set up your data security. I cannot give you a secure server. I cannot facilitate access to that. That's not ever going to be me. But I know who to call, and I know who to send you to, and I know what information you need to go. So we'll start with that, and sometimes I'll make the calls for people, and sometimes I will just give them the information and say, you need to start over here. Call this person, and then when you've gotten that part set up, maybe you'll come back to me about something else. So we hand them off, but we get them to that right person. As you're thinking about all of these and the role that you want to inhabit, this ties back to the goals. What are your goals? For you personally, what are your professional development goals for this? What are your institution's goals? If your library has research data management in your strategic plan, that's an argument for you to put a research data management goal in your annual review. And you can tie it to your strategic plan. That way you and your supervisor can discuss where that time comes in, because this does certainly take time. And again, what resources do you already have at your institution? All right, so now I'm going to hand it off to Spencer to talk about his experience as a social science liaison.
Hi, everyone. This is Spencer, and it's good to be here today. I'm going to talk to you for about 4 slides about some of my experiences that I've had as a librarian. I do have a background in librarianship, but I also have a background in sociology and in psychology both. And so I'm coming at this a bit at a different angle, perhaps. I'm wanting to share with you today some anecdotes, some advice, some personal experiences that I've had in dealing with data as a liaison and also as a researcher. And so I want to start by talking about some additional activities that you may be able to do as a liaison, right? So Abigail talked a bit about some. I want to extend some of these activities a little bit more. I want to start by talking about data interviews. With who? With everyone. So when I'm talking about data interviews, I'm really talking about a reference interview, right? Because as liaisons, you're already doing reference interviews and instruction interviews. A data interview is essentially that, but it's about data needs. And again, so this is a lot of stuff that liaison librarians are already talking about and information that liaison librarians are already gathering. It's just now data is being added. So for example, you have a student or a faculty member who comes to you and says that they need information about maybe gender and income in the United States. This is just an example that I'm throwing out there. This is not incredibly different than them needing data about gender and income. Yes, it may be a bit different, it may look a little bit different, but it's really just at a more granular level, okay? And so it's really, I've learned over the years that this really is sort of an extension or just a reference type of interview, just in a bit of a different way, and things that we're already doing. One of the things that I want to mention is that for social sciences students and faculty, they conduct a lot of secondary data analysis, okay? And so I think it's very important for a liaison librarian to understand this. Whether we're talking about sociology, psychology, political science, business, etc., a lot of the data and the data sets that those users are looking for are going to be data that already exists, right? And so that's not true all the time. Of course, they're also conducting and gathering their original data, but secondary data analysis is really important. But I think it's important to keep in mind that you, as a liaison, if you're a liaison librarian, you aren't being asked necessarily to interpret data or analyze data. And I think that that's one thing that in talking with other social sciences liaisons, that's something that they often feel pretty frightened about or scary. You know, you find the process, particularly if you're not familiar with data, that prospect quite scary because you think that these users are asking you to help interpret their data or analyze their data. And in many cases, that's not the case. And I think once you let go of that, you'll be happier, you'll be more confident. A part of this secondary data analysis, though, that the users in social sciences are going to be doing is, if it's psychology, for example, the reproduction, the reproducibility is important. And so psychology students often may come to you looking for data sets, and they're going to be concerned with reproducibility. And as a part of that data interview, I think that that's something that liaison librarians should be comfortable knowing and asking about. For sociology, sociology uses a lot of both qualitative and quantitative data. So understanding that distinction is important. And of course, GIS, that's a buzzword, I guess. It has been for quite some time. GIS services are particularly important now. And so as you're conducting data interviews with faculty and with students, these are things that you're going to want to keep in mind. You're going to want to be comfortable asking. You know, if you know that it's a psychology student, talk to them about reproducibility. And if they're sociology or political science, anthropology, whatever the case may be, talk to them about whether they're looking for qualitative or quantitative data. Again, it's just an extension of a reference interview. It's just now about data. And so a lot of this, the fact that they rely a lot on secondary data analysis, makes sense that we have a lot of resources for social sciences, data resources such as ICPSR. Many of you may be familiar with the Pew Research Center and other resources. But I also want to talk about a data interview with your boss, with your supervisor, whoever that may be. It may be your department chair, it may be a dean, it may be, you know, the administrators in your library. The data interview that I'm talking about with them is not necessarily what the data they're looking for, but it's an interview about support. And so I found that it's important in talking with your supervisors that you talk to them about data services and data assistance that your users are coming to you for, to express to your supervisors that you have users who have data needs, and it communicates to your supervisors that you have the desire for support and that you need to be supportive as a liaison in these data discussions that are happening with your users. And so it's important too, I think, and this is true, something that I've come across, is that it's important for department chairs, division chairs, directors, et cetera, to understand that social sciences data management, it's a thing, right? It's happening. And it's been my experience that sometimes administrators, they may not know this. They may not, or if they do, they don't quite understand as administrators quite how that might work or that the needs are. That's where they're counting on you. They're counting on you to talk to them and let them know that you have users, you have faculty and students that are needing these services and that are asking these questions. And as a part of this data interview or this data discussion that you have with your bosses and your supervisors is what I call, or what we call here where I currently work at UK, an elevator speech. And so this is something that we're working on here. Basically, we're talking about a 5-minute pitch, sort of a pitch no more than 5 minutes in favor of data management. This is to, again, your supervisors, to administrators, but also to your library coworkers, to faculty, and others who may not necessarily understand why this is important, okay? And so sitting down and sort of developing and distilling information down to less than a 5-minute pitch, where you can tell your administrators, your deans, your provosts, if you're talking, to those that level of administrator, this is why data management is important, particularly for the social sciences, and again, this is to develop and create that conversation and to get support. I also want to talk just real briefly about data management plans. So this is something that's not exclusive to the social sciences, but it's something certainly that here, at least at UK, that we are working on with some of the social sciences faculty here. Basically, a data management plan, or a DMP, is simply a plan on how data is going to be managed. Sometimes this can be required as a part of a grant submission. So social scientist faculty, they're going to come to you and say, hey, I'm submitting a grant and I need to have a data management plan. It's a part of the requirements of getting this grant that I have a plan. And so as a liaison, this is something certainly that you can work with them. Keep in mind, your role in this as a liaison is as a consultant, okay? You as a liaison are not writing the plan for them. You're not writing a data management plan for them. You aren't managing the data for them quite in the sense of all the particulars that the faculty may need. But yes, you are consulting with them, and this is something that a liaison can do. Currently, I'm working with, and a group of us here at UK are working with faculty in anthropology and in agriculture. They've come with us with the need. They say, hey, we're applying for these grants. We've got these projects. We need a data management plan. Can you help us? Well, yes. The data we use here, we use what's called DMP tool. It's DMP tool. There are other tools out there, but this is a tool that we're currently using, and basically you can use it with your faculty, with your students, if that is something that they come to you looking for, and it's something that increasingly data management plans are becoming a more and more part of sort of the data management cycle. Okay, so I want to move on and talk about the leveraging of partnerships that currently exist. So many of us here probably work at academic libraries, right? And it's something that we want to think about institutions on your campus that may already exist and what sort of partnerships may already be in place. If the wheel has already been invented, there's no sense in going back and trying to reinvent it. However, you as a liaison should be available to help augment these relationships. It's not that you have to start from scratch, although I will say that libraries are at different places, right? Some libraries are maybe just beginning to get started in the data management process. Others may be a little bit further along. But it's important to think about at your institution, are there already centers and institutions, their units in place, and particularly even partnerships that are already developed, and if so, how can you tap into that? It may be, for example, your Office of Research and Sponsored Projects. They may have data services that are already being made available, or an existing data center. It's important to look at what's already there, and if there are things in place, seek to augment it by reaching out. And I'll talk about outreach here in just a little bit. Here at UK, what I'm doing, and several of us here, we're working to do this, to reach out to other campus departments, other campus units, to get involved. And as a liaison, you already know how to do outreach. This is something that you're already experts, right, in outreach and reaching out there and making contacts. And this is something that I certainly encourage you to do, because it can be very, very successful. It has in my case here with simply reaching out and letting people know that, hey, I am here to provide social sciences assistance with data. How can we be a part? What kind of partnerships can we create? And for me, I think of this, the best way that helps me think about this is that, again, this is not a new service. It's really something that it's an extension of already what you do. And for me, that helps me and gives me the motivation to say, okay, I'm already doing this. As a liaison, I'm already doing this, but it's just taking it a little step further. So also, now here at where I currently work at UK, we have a committee and a task force, okay? And so I bring that up just to say that particularly if you're just starting out at your university with maybe exploring offering these services, as a liaison, talk about developing a committee with some of your close colleagues or a task force to be able to talk about how to move these data initiatives forward. And I think that can go a long way. You're not alone in this, and it's important to not just think about partnerships external to the library, but what partnerships you may be able to create within the library.
Spencer, this is Cass. I have a clarifying question for you.
Sure.
When you talk about the committees and task forces, are you talking about various librarians who are involved with some aspect of data, kind of interdisciplinary?
Yes, it is. What we have in both the committee and the task force, and they do have different goals ultimately, but yes, it is interdisciplinary. And so by which I mean we've got people from multiple departments who have different expertise. And so in this particular case, I'm at a university where we are on the road to getting a full center developed here. But yes, it is interdisciplinary, and I think it should be, because if you have your liaison, let's say from sociology, but also your liaison from agriculture or history or business, etc., you've got a metadata librarian who comes in, who's able to provide their expertise. You can draw upon each other's strengths that can help overcome weaknesses, and you can draw upon those strengths of each other. And I found that to be very, very beneficial. About training and experience, training and experience sessions. So, of course, if you're able, of course, you get into data services, training. If you're able to do that, that's great, to faculty, staff, students. But something that I think is often overlooked as a liaison is helping to train your fellow librarian coworkers. So if you're a liaison and you're already working with faculty and students about data questions, sometimes we may have a tendency to sort of work within our own silo. What I'm proposing here instead is to, whenever you're talking to faculty and students and you get information from them and you gain knowledge, don't be afraid to share those experiences with your fellow librarians. And I'm using the term experience sessions. That's not necessarily what we call them here. That's sort of a term, though, that I'm using. An experience session, basically, where you get together with colleagues, other liaisons in your areas, where you are able to share data experiences. You sit down and you share experiences. The idea basically is to create a culture, right, of sharing experiences by letting your colleagues know the questions that you're getting, the needs that you have that are being met or unmet. You're talking about problems and issues you've had and how they've been addressed. And so in these sort of experience sessions, you're getting together informally with your colleagues and talking about data, and it'll help you feel more at ease. And like I said, we do this here currently, and it's been extremely useful for a lot of folks. The idea, though, is to make sure that all the social sciences liaisons are involved in that. And the idea ultimately is to create this community of practice, sort of to be organic as possible, to get people together around that common endeavor, and to explore data, again, in more of an informal, collegial atmosphere. So time is of the essence, of course. I want to just sort of run through very, very briefly these considerations for researchers, right? And so here I'm saying let's take a step back for a moment and think and talk about some things that researchers are having to think about now increasingly. And sometimes it helps us as liaison librarians to put ourselves in the shoes of that social science researcher. We know that there are increasing requirements for academic journals to actually, as a condition of publication, to have data files and data sets stored where researchers can get to them. And also for grant funding agencies as well. This is particularly, I think, mostly thanks to NSF, National Science Foundation, but other grant agencies as well, where researchers are now being asked to, as a part of grant funding, to provide access to their data. And also, too, maybe as a researcher may have a personal commitment, or there may be an institutional commitment to provide open data and open information. And so this sort of all ties into this idea of data sharing, right, and how to make this data available. So as a researcher, there are aspects such as data integrity, right? Ensuring confidentiality, anonymity, privacy, and other types of identifying information. How to, how to go about making sure that happens. And again, these are questions that researchers that you've taken a step back as a liaison and you're trying to put yourself in a researcher's shoes. There's protocols and conventions researchers have to think about, where to store data. But the reason that I mentioned this is that this is a great opportunity for you as a social science liaison to come in, because the question is, why should you care? Okay, why should you as a social sciences librarian liaison care? And I'm going to tell you why. It's because social scientists may not be trained to consider all of these issues that we've talked about. And this is your opportunity to fill the gap. And I can speak to this from personal experience. Whenever I was getting my PhD in sociology, my professors didn't talk to me in the sociology department. They didn't talk to me a lot. There was one that did, but all of this stuff that we've mentioned, myself and Abigail, none of my sociology professors talks about any of this to me, really. And so you can't assume that the professors and the grad students know any of this. I certainly didn't. I did as a librarian. And so this is a very strong argument for you as a liaison, as a social science liaison, to step up and really be able to provide services to them and sort of have that data interview. So just real briefly, I'll talk maybe just about a couple of these. And again, this is some of the information that I've learned as a social sciences liaison and as a researcher myself. First, I think it's very, very important to understand that this research data management in the social sciences, it's a part of your job now. I get questions from faculty asking about, and students, really, it's really the grad students, asking about this. And I'm expected as a liaison to be able to at least get them on the right track. No, I don't have to, as Abigail mentioned, I don't have to be a data expert, but I do need to have enough knowledge and enough information to be able to get them on the right track. I want to say, too, that something that we're doing here is we're getting ready to start an internal knowledge base. Basically, to determine the strengths and the weaknesses of the staff that we have. It's perfectly acceptable and it's perfectly okay to know what your strengths are, but also your weaknesses as a liaison. And by having an internal knowledge base, basically what we're exploring here at UK to do is to have rosters of employees with what skills they have, their proficiencies, their competencies, so that it can be easier then to be able to say, okay, I know that so-and-so is proficient and competent in this particular area as it concerns data. I can contact them for help and for assistance. I will say that it's you can never predict when users need data assistance, just like with any reference sort of issue. You don't know what questions are going to be asked. And so that's why it's important to devote some time to professional development. There are a lot of different ways to engage in professional development. If you've got questions about that, I can give you some examples. And so it's okay to start small. You can't be everything to everybody. If you're just getting started at your institution about this, or you're just developing data literacy plans or whatever, it's absolutely fine to start small and grow from there. And then lastly, I'll say that it's absolutely important to say yes. When you get users coming to you with data questions, social sciences data questions, yes, we as librarians want to help them, but it's also important when to say no. Say no when it's appropriate. And so for me as a social science liaison, I've been asked to do things like clean data. I've been asked to analyze data, to interpret data. That is not something as a liaison librarian you have to do if that falls beyond the purview of your job. And I think it's important as social sciences liaisons to know your boundaries and say if you have students who ask these or faculty who ask these sorts of questions, that it's okay to say no, but let me get you in the right direction and get you on your way so that you can receive the help that you need. So I'm going to shut up now after I've talked your ears off. I'm going to pass this back to Abigail, who is going to talk just a little bit more briefly and wrap things up.
All right. Thank you, Spencer. So, Spencer alluded to this a lot, and we both talked about this. One of the biggest messages we can both give you is to not do this alone. You are not alone. There is a large community of people who are working with data, either as liaisons or as data librarians, and we always encourage people to reach out to that. But you're also not alone on your campuses. When you're thinking about opportunities to partner with your faculty, it's going to be a lot. Any new initiative that's coming from the library will be much more successful with those partners. So you can talk to them about data information literacy. If you want to talk about education with their students, there's data information literacy competencies that you can start with. Or you can talk to them about their research projects. Every researcher I know loves to talk about themselves. I fall very much in that category. So ask them, ask them about their research projects. It's also a really nice opportunity to partner with other units on campus. And often they're looking for direction on this as well. We're all trying to handle this. We're all trying to meet these new needs, these new requirements. Talk to your Office of Research. Talk to your honors college. There's a lot of unusual partners. It doesn't just have to be IT and the usual suspects. And one of my favorite ways to start these engagements is with a question. If I'm talking to faculty, the one that I like to ask is, there's just so much going on with data. What's hardest for your students? And the reason I ask that is, one, it tells me where the education need is. And as I said, my work is on the education side. it tells me that, it also gives me a sense of kind of what they're struggling with, but they may not want to tell me that the faculty member may not want to tell me that they're having trouble with something. So if I can figure out where a pain point is, the student can't give me X. Okay, well, let's figure out how to file name better so that your students can give you the files in a way that works for you. And they end up learning a little bit as well and improving their data practices. So your goals and capacity is going to vary by institution. We want to figure out what yours are, both for your institution and your personal one. Not everyone is a data librarian, but we can all do a little bit of data. And doing that raises all of our knowledge and all of our awareness. And we cannot do this alone. So we want to partner for your strength and success. Now, when Cass introduced me, she mentioned the Roadshow, which Megan Milton and I built. And I want to encourage you, if you are interested in having a full-day workshop on research data management that was built for liaisons. Our target audience with the Roadshow is liaison librarians. You can contact Chase Alice at ALA and talk to him about bringing in the Roadshow. There's 6 of us that go out and do presentations. You'd get a team of 2 of us, and it is a full 8.5-hour day workshop. It's a very, very long day, but we really enjoy it, and it's a lot of fun. I just got back from doing one of those abroad. It was our first international trip. So that is where we'll leave you for today. We have about 5 more minutes, so we would welcome any questions that you have for either Spencer or I.
And this is Cass. Feel free to ask questions on your mics or put questions again in the chat. I have a question for both of you. I really appreciated that last slide about all the opportunities for forming campus partnerships. I have a question that has come to me from both social sciences faculty and from social sciences liaisons. Sometimes on campuses it can feel like data is the province of the cool kids, like it's already being done by the big NSF grant folks with geospatial data or huge data sets related to the ocean or something like that. Or it's being done in biomedical data, you know, and that's kind of an insular group. I love all those researchers, don't get me wrong, but it just seems like social sciences folks are a little bit late to the party. So what are your tips on navigating that for liaisons? How do they get invited to the party? How do they invite themselves?
I think to some degree we can be that bridge. You know, if these conversations are already happening on campus, interdisciplinary and anything where there's new interdisciplinary encouragement, development, my campus does a lot to promote interdisciplinary collaboration. And if we're working together across 2 fields, we have wildly different data conversations. And that's somewhere I can step in as a translator or as an educator. So that looking at those, I think it really helps to go after students. Most of us who are faculty, who are researchers, who are liaisons, it's easy to just kind of lock into this works for me and this is how I do it. Our students are not yet locked into all of our bad habits. So if we can go after them, sometimes that will help things trickle up to their PIs, and then we can start having more significant conversations.
I love that tip, and it kind of leads to my next question that I noted during your talk. Another concern I've heard from social sciences librarians is that sometimes researchers will kind of bypass the liaison and go right to IT or to the known data librarian. So I think that maybe your tip of starting with students is another way to kind of, you know, work with a generation coming up on how to do that. But I wondered if you had any other points. I've heard that from some librarians.
Well, I'm never going to not tell somebody to go talk to IT. That's a given. That one I don't think we can solve. In terms of that, I think there you want to make sure that there's a strong relationship in the library and a strong culture. If the data librarian is not sure that they can come back to you with a question, if that relationship is not strong, they may feel worried about stepping on toes or something like that, there can certainly be some territory issues. Like I said, I have a couple of colleagues who hand stuff off to me, and we're great, we're very open, and I just throw things back at them. There are other colleagues where we might not have that same level of comfort and transparency, and sometimes that's just personnel things that we need to work on in the library. Some of that is also discovery. Like if they go to the library website and they find the data librarian, and that's the need they may just go directly to them, and that's not a bad thing. But help your data librarians get them back to you, and that can be saying, hey, I am interested in this, so when you get those questions and you do see my faculty, can you help me? Can you bring me in? How can we do this together? And that's that library colleague piece. Spencer, your thoughts?
I would use that, quite honestly, sort of as a learning and a training opportunity as a liaison. If you've got a student or a faculty member who goes directly to a data librarian, if you've got one at your institution, and again, this can be certainly for the social sciences or for any other sort of sciences, that if you as a liaison, I think first and foremost is important to develop a relationship internally with the data librarian or the data center, the people involved in that at your library. I think that is an important step first. And then, so once you have that relationship in place, then what can happen is you can let them know that, hey, if you may get questions and inquiries from my faculty, if you would, just let me know. Keep me informed about that. And I don't think that's, stepping on anyone's toes. I think the liaison should be open to that and say, if you do get questions directly, then let me know. And furthermore, keep me in the loop on the discussions that you're having so that I can learn what data questions my faculty as a liaison are asking, so that then I can sort of learn what I need to be learning, to help my faculty in the future.
I feel like these are great answers. Thank you so much. I do not see other questions in the chat or any raised hands, and we are at our time. So I just want to say thank you to both of you so much, Abigail and Spencer. And a big thank you to Lois Sharp from ACRL for setting up the room, and to Yu-Wei Chen, who's my fellow member at large, in arranging this. I know I learned a ton, and thank you both. We look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, thank you.